Okay.
Hello, friends. I'm your host Shashi with you all on Women Dialogues to create more voice for women and by women. And today's our guest is connecting from St. John's, California. Alysha, she is having something very special for us. So let's welcome our today's speaker, Alysha, to here to listen, to understand what she is having for us, to inspire and to motivate us. As I would like to introduce one more thing about her. She is very famous in the podcast world. She does a lot of podcasts, and you can see the beautiful name behind her. That's Myrony. What is all about? I know you all might be interested to hear all about. So let's hear from her side what she has all about. So welcome, Alysha, on Women Dialogues Global Talk Show.
Oh, well, thank you so much. I'm so honored to be here today. I absolutely love what you're doing. It's so incredible. I can't believe you've only been doing this, as you said, since January of 2021, and it's now May, and you have over 90 shows. So congratulations to you on that.
Thank you. Thanks a lot, Alicia, and thank you for joining us to share your work, your journey, and to maybe inspire and motivate our audience who are listening and watching us. And as I said, you are working in podcast world. You are very famous. You are almost more than top 5%. If may I'm not, if maybe I'm a little bit incorrect, please correct me, but you are among top podcasters. So let's hear about how it all started. What came in your mind? What was the vision behind this? And then how this name, beautiful, that's Myrony, come out and you started. Please share your journey.
Yeah, well, first off, myrony is the combination of my irony. But we take out the I because it's not about I, it's about we and something so much greater. And I like to add the Y back in because it's all about the Y. But actually, the funniest thing is my last name is actually pronounced Myronic. So everyone has these Myronic experiences, just not the way I spell my last name. That's Myrony, which is the name of my podcast. But how Myrony are the crazy coincidences that happen in life that we can't explain. It's also a more modern day word for sign or synchronicity. However, it actually has its own definition because it's synchronicity in motion. You see that sign, and then there's an action we can actually take. So when we trust those external signs, then we trust our internal signs as our gut reactions, and it's amazing what doors will open up when we really truly start paying attention. So I like to say in the first episode of my podcast, it's called "Discover Myrony and Your Inner Superpower." I call my inner superpower my spiritual spidey sense. I have this very, very strong gift of claircognizance, which is the gift of knowing. And I actually never knew about this gift. I knew about clairvoyancy, where you see things, clairaudience, where you hear things. But I had never heard of this claircognizance. And it wasn't until I read the book, it was called The Light Between Us by a psychic medium whose name is Laura Lynn Jackson. She's actually a very famous psychic medium. And she talks about having all these gifts, and that was her strongest one. I was like, oh my goodness, that is what I have because I do the weirdest things just by knowing. So, where this all started, what's really interesting is so I grew up, I'm in San Jose, California now, but I grew up outside of New York City in the state of New Jersey. Um, and when I was 16 years old, I had the strongest feeling to go to the state of Delaware and go to school at University of Delaware. And it was only a couple hours away, but I had never been to the state. Like, I mean, it was so strong. And it was like, why am I feeling so compelled to go?
Mhm.
Well, I trusted it. I only applied to two universities, which is crazy. You never, why would you? I mean, how can you only apply to two schools? But something was like, no, you're supposed to go. Um, so this was my journey got really crazy. So, but really, truly, my higher self chose this path, and I accept that, and that's part of this story also. But really, where it started was almost 17 years ago. My father became terminally ill very quickly. In May of 2004, he thought he had the flu. July, he was diagnosed with cancer. August 29th, he passed away. August 22nd, I got married after getting engaged after 6 days, basically planned a wedding in 6 days, got married, and my dad passed away 1 week later. So I don't know how I'm the only one in history born, engaged, and married in the same hospital, because my dad was in hospice in the hospital. How does that happen? If you go listen to the first episode, you'll hear how these crazy stories happen. But the thing was, is that was when I first experienced all these incredible signs. So, I get engaged. I did not get married just to be with, just for my father, for him, for the situation. I took marriage actually very seriously. But it's like, what am I going to wear in 6 days, right? So the first wedding dress I tried on, dress of my dreams, shoes, last pair of my size, like everything was bought for my bridal ensemble in 3 hours with lunch. How does that happen? Irony, apparently. There were so many signs that were showing up that day, even down to the day before I got married. So again, my dad was in hospice in the hospital. So we were going to have the reception. They had this beautiful courtyard in the hospital. And the day before, on August 21st, it was torrential downpour. It was like jokingly, on a Christian side, jokingly build an ark and start loading up the animals kind of rain, like just sheets of rain. And it was so bad that everybody's like, what are you going to do? My dad was in too much pain. He couldn't leave the hospital. And I said, if there truly is a God, he will not take this away from my father. Now, what's really interesting about that is that I kind of turned away from using the word God. I was brought up Catholic, not that there's anything wrong, but I am of the belief that maybe there's a lot more to this way of looking at spirituality. So I always believed in a higher power, but I would always say universe or whatever. So the fact that I even used those words was what was so shocking. But the next day, I literally experienced a miracle. On August 22nd, it was the most beautiful day. There was not a drop of rain, not a cloud in the sky, no humidity, which is unheard of in that part of the country after a rain like that. I basically had a sunny, beautiful California day in New Jersey. Excuse me. And it was so incredible because I just couldn't get over what I witnessed that day. Well, I believe I witnessed that because my life was going to fall apart. So my dad passed away, which that was so difficult because he was not quite 67 when he passed. And then my now husband, we met at a restaurant. Now, here's the funny thing. The restaurant was called 821. So if you remember, 821 was the day I challenged God, that I say, by this torrential downpour. So we're asked to, excuse me, I'm so sorry. We're asked to buy this restaurant, and where I was the general manager and he was the chef. Well, we were supposed to buy the restaurant on December 1st. We ended up buying it on December 8th, which is 821 backwards. Maybe this was a sign of how backwards my life was going to become. So there was some more tragedy that happened in my family. My brother and his then wife became pregnant with twins, and they lost the twins 5.5 months into the pregnancy, which happened like very soon, less than a year after all this. That put me into a greater depression of losing my dad and, this tragedy. And then I also had fibromyalgia. I don't know if you're familiar with fibromyalgia, but, a very painful chronic condition. So I wasn't doing well, and then when I didn't think things could get worse, they did. There was a girl who worked for me who, I don't know how she did this. She had a hernia, but somehow she created in her mind that she had cancer and was going through chemotherapy, decided to leave her husband to be with mine. And it all started at her son's 1-year birthday party. That was a lot to deal with. My life then turns into a soap opera drama. And because I own this restaurant, this was all within 1 year of my dad's passing.
Mm-hmm.
So I just lost my mind. I'll be the first one to admit it. I couldn't escape it. I had to be in this. I had to be in this situation because I own this restaurant. And then I was very fortunate because I somehow tapped into my father's energy. I discovered I had mediumship abilities. And that higher awareness of what was being given to me was what kept me going. I even, at one point, I even tried to commit suicide because this girl became pregnant. If you remember the drama of the whole Brad Pitt, Angelina Jolie, Jennifer Aniston triangle, that was my life going on at the same time, just on a micro level. Except a lot of people knew me, so it was even more. It was so difficult. So, but having this higher perspective, or whatever I was being given, recognizing it's like, okay, why am I why did this happen, like I had actually had a really good relationship. It's like, how could something go so wrong? Well, the interesting thing is then I'm given a book, after, like, I knew I had to fight, I had to figure out something, just kept telling me, like, you're going to figure out what the heck's going on.
Right.
And the biggest irony, so again, the crazy coincidences we can't explain. My friend who took my wedding pictures the day before she moved away gave me this book that saved my life forever. And it was called Many Lives, Many Masters by Dr. Brian Weiss. Now, Dr. Brian Weiss, for those that don't know who he is, he was an agnostic psychiatrist who risked his entire career because it's actually connected to the concepts of past life regression therapy. And
Mm.
I read this book and I said, wow, if there's one way I would actually believe in a quote unquote religion, this would be it, because it's talking about all about love, but also how we choose everything that happens in our life. So then it became kind of my mission of like, why did I choose this crazy life? Like, why did my higher self choose all of this? And
Right.
so that is what kept me alive, honestly. I mean, there were so many things, but I just kept fighting and fighting. Now, here's my second biggest irony is, when 2008 happened, the economy crashed. I lost my restaurant. I closed my doors on April 22nd of 2008. And then in May, and why I say that is that's actually a significant date, which I'll explain in just a moment. But in May of 2008, I'm broken. I feel like I can't leave my apartment, and just absolutely lost. And I happen to have the TV on, and I had Oprah. I was watching Oprah, but I was actually in my bedroom, so I'm just listening. And I hear these profound words, and I was like, oh my goodness, that sounds like the author of Many Lives, Many Masters. Sure enough, here's Dr. Weiss, 20th anniversary of that book. That to me was the biggest sign to keep going.
Right.
So what ended up happening, so then my mom ended up passing away in 2011. um, I was still being able to be given guidance from above, but what I then started doing was living from this place of more intuition. I didn't know that I had this gift of claircognizance at the time, but I knew that when this happened with my now ex, it was the one time I didn't trust my intuition. So to your listeners out there, always pay attention to your intuition. That is what this is all about. But the thing was, this ended up being my greatest gift ever. And
Mm-hmm.
I will even say I went through what I did so that I could go back to being Myronic, so that I could bring
Right.
Myrony to the world, because my married name was not Myronic.
But Alysha, as you shared about those intuition power, right? It's all about the experiences. We understand, and it's really sad that you have to go through all those experiences to come to know how one can understand those intuition, how one can start realizing, because as you share that you started understanding more consciously those signs, those what are these signs mean for you. I think we all get these, but what is your give tips to give to our audience, because we all are having a lot of things in our happening, but we hardly pay conscious our effort to understand and to realize those intuitions, that these are our signs and these something we should understand. We still keep getting on those some kind of traps or some same kind of situation problems, and then keep getting ourselves into the same kind of mindset and thought, oh my life sucks, oh my life this, oh this is that. What is your give, how we can do that, what way we can develop that?
Well, I just want to, I mentioned about 422. So the funny thing is how I actually came up with the word. Because
Mhm.
at this time, I'm just recognizing these crazy signs happening, but I didn't have the
Right.
word. So how I came up with the word was I used to sell high-end cars, and I was actually selling Jaguars. And people would ask, how do you say your last name? And I would say it's like ironic with an M. And then I just started adding, there's a lot of irony to my life, and people would chuckle. And then one day it hit me that these were those signs that I kept seeing that made absolutely, but that would just pull at my intuition or something, just like pay attention, pay attention. And that was when I was like, oh my goodness, irony, my irony. And then I was like, this is actually the opposite of selfie. And one of the things with social media, even though it can be an incredibly powerful tool and platform, is that people have become so obsessed with just themselves. So then I was like, what if we start having people share their ironies in addition to their selfies? And then we can connect on this much greater level, this much higher level, and that actually will help raise this consciousness, this awareness. Because really,
Right.
what when I say discover irony in your inner superpower, the superpower is awareness. That's it. So when you're so going back to this 422, I closed my restaurant 422 2008. I tell a family member about irony on 422 2015. However, I didn't know that I had closed my restaurant. So what are the odds, right? So I actually consider my anniversary of irony is 422. That's what I consider like really bringing it into the world in 2015. And the truth is we can receive these signs in so many different ways. If we've lost loved ones, there's a really beautiful book also by Laura Lynn Jackson called Signs, the Secret Language of the Universe, which is basically irony, but she doesn't know that yet. But that explains, like, if you ask for a sign from a loved one, you can ask for like the craziest sign and somehow they make it happen. If you feel like you're hearing a song and it sounds like it's playing for you, listen to the words, because maybe it is. Seeing number sequences. I would see these number sequences over and over, forwards, backwards, and I'm like, what is this? I can't exactly say what it exactly is, but then I would start trusting whatever my intuition was telling me. So I
Mhm.
encourage the listeners, pay attention. If something captures your attention, and
Mhm.
if you start seeing it over and over again, there could be some significance, and then trusting your inner, your inner intuition. Because the one time I went against it is basically how I lost my husband. And and the funny thing is I knew it. It was so funny because that day that happened, my navigation in our car would not get us there. It got us
Right.
lost for like an hour. So instead of listening to my car navigation, I then did not listen to my internal navigation.
Right. Right.
And, I thought that was the biggest mistake of my life. It ended up being the greatest gift of my life. But I also know I went through everything that I did so that I could help other people. And that's, the
Right.
other side of what I do. Because unless you go through things yourself, you don't really truly understand. But if I
Mhm.
can, but if I can bring this awareness where people are like, oh my goodness, I see this, especially with people, you run across somebody, and the way we are so globally connected now. So you could be potentially in one networking group, and then you see the same person in another networking group. Well, you know what? Maybe pay attention and have a conversation. It's all about opening those doors, and when those doors open, walk
Mhm.
through, see what's
Right.
on the other side. I mean,
Yeah.
even how you connected with me. You happened to see me on LinkedIn. You thought it was pretty cool what I was doing. I love this. And now you're going to be a guest on, my podcast at some point, because it sounds like you got some incredible ironies that need to be shared. But
Right.
that's the thing. Something was like, hey, I need to connect with this person, and look at
Mhm.
where we are. And
Right.
so that's really one of the biggest things, in addition to the signs, is the connection. I like to say
Yeah.
ironies are spiritual breadcrumbs. You just want to follow the path, but sometimes it's the
Mhm.
smallest crumb. Sometimes you get like a nice big loaf of bread. You're like, okay, that is awesome. But sometimes it's the smallest crumb that's going to have the greatest impact. And I
Mhm.
say it will literally like create miracles in your life and in others. And also little magic. I think there's a lot of magic to it. And
Mhm.
in my logo here, this is Winky and the O. That's how I represent God is love with an awesome sense of humor.
Mhm.
And, I just think that when we can really start connecting from that higher place, things just start making much more sense.
Mhm. Yeah, I think that way you explained about this intuition and consciousness and how we can, get those small or bigger, the way you give an example of this bread loaf or breadcrumb, it makes clear sense. But uh, as you are talking about it, and in current scenario when we are having this global pandemic, people are so much stressed. They are having a lot of mental struggle, physical struggle. What kind of lesson, or what kind of tips or point you want to give them, that they can understand that take this movement in a positive way, or take it in a conscious way, that why it is happening to me, how it is happening to me, rather than soaking this negative news media, which keeps giving you fear and a lot of stress. How they can make their own effort, which can make them spiritually and make them their consciously their efforts for their life, and same time keeping them in a relaxed path, or in the rather than getting into this mental health trouble.
Well, I think it's really, I mean, one of the things that I do, so my other business is I have my Myrony mentoring.
Yeah,
And
yeah.
what I do is I help people who feel lost. So exactly what you're
Right.
saying, who feel lost and are spiritually curious, who want to understand why they may have gone, why they're going through what they are in life. And when we can just break it down to two sides of the coin, love and fear and everything in between. And and this was actually through also Dr. Brian Weiss, a beautiful book called Messages from the Masters, where he was shown this vision of Earth being a one-room schoolhouse, and we're all at different grades. So if
Mhm.
someone's acting poorly, even as an adult, and they're like acting out, well, maybe they're acting like a terrible 2-year old. Can you really get mad at a 2-year old? No, but they don't have the awareness. So once we have the awareness, we can really shift that lens of how we look at everything. And when we can really accept the fact that somehow, if you want to really get mad at yourself, get mad at your higher self. My higher self has been an absolute masochist to me, in the sense that I've lost both my parents. I lost the ability to have kids in my early 30s. Bankruptcy, divorce. I actually had to deal with alcohol. I dealt with alcohol abuse, but also prescription drug addiction, chronic pain. I mean, I got hit with a lot of things that, I will admit there were times I wanted to leave this planet, but it was knowing and understanding that somehow there was a reason for it all. And so I encourage everyone, when you're going through that, you just understand that somehow there really is a reason. But you either choose to play the victim of your life, or you choose to see it as, I somehow created this, and I know that there's a greater reason for it. So I love working with people through my Minority mentoring. I like to call it unlock. I help unlock your blocks, and it's through, I receive guidance through my gift of claircognizance. I receive messages that I'm supposed to give specifically to my clients. But what I do is I help show the blind spots that we're not able to find for ourselves. So it's like, if you see a repeated thing happening in your life over and over again, that's probably the lesson your higher self is trying to have you learn. Our
Mhm.
insecurities could be our own karmic debts, because we're supposed to love ourselves no matter what. We can love others, but we're supposed to love ourselves just as much. And that can be really hard for people. I'll be the first one to admit I was probably the meanest person ever to myself. Loved everyone else, but not quite myself. So it's just this growth that we have to, but it's like also don't pay attention to all if it's all negative, like remove yourself from that. Look at the more beautiful things. They're through the ugly, but that's also the other thing is it's through the ugly that we can actually see the beauty.
Mhm.
It's only through those difficult times can we really learn those lessons. When it's everything's going well, then it's kind of like no one really pays attention. It's during those difficult times is when we start digging deeper into ourselves. So really those difficult times are actually can be the greatest gifts in our lives.
Yeah, that's so. I think sharing this that about how we can relate our life, how we can get those signs and read those signs by creating those conscious effort, and as you are referring those points by your own experience, by your own life, I think it is important. You was talking about your mentorship, and you was talking about this past regression and all these kind of therapies, and or maybe those efforts to make your life better. What are all these? Would you like to share more about those?
Well, yeah, I mean, there's people that do past life regression therapy. I have an incredible friend. I'm going to give the biggest shout out to her. She's up in Canada. Her name's Deanne Riendo. She does something known as the Akashic Records, which I don't know if you're familiar with the Akashic Records, but apparently it's our soul record. And I had a very, very spiritual experience back in 2000, also in 2015, May 10th of 2015. And if anybody wants to hear that story, they can go to my friend's podcast, Sense of Soul. They're actually in the top 1.5% of
Wow.
globally. So they're actually they're the superstars in the podcast. But on February 22nd, 2021, I told this story about my experience, and I can't explain this, but I'm being guided to share this. I somehow spent 24 hours with God in the sense of God is love with an awesome sense of humor. Super modern energy. It was just omnipresent, but it was incredible. And so I've actually been given the message of how I'm supposed to help those that feel lost in life, but also show who God is as love with an awesome sense of humor. And he wants to come back as being fun. And there's a female side too. There's both, but there's so much that we're not even embracing. But it's like maybe if we start looking at the key, what are the major religions, and we take those key pieces and we start putting them together, well, maybe we're going to have a much more beautiful picture, and we'll actually be able to create this inclusiveness instead of this divisiveness. And that is also what the point for Myrony is for people to start sharing these stories so that we can start connecting to them. And how beautiful is that that's how we could actually be helping each other out. We go through a difficult time, but we have the craziest situation that's connected to it, and then somebody's like, oh my goodness, that happened to me too. Who knows? Those people could become friends. It's you just never know what these possibilities are. But with what I do is I show people through actually it's a lot of there's certain books that I recommend, so it allows us to connect on the cerebral level. But then in our one-on-one sessions, and I am actually doing group sessions soon also, and I'm going to have an online, even just kind of on little online course if you just kind of want to follow along with that. But
Mhm.
I receive messages in addition that is really truly that go along with it, and they're just from a more higher, beautiful place. And so, if anybody's curious on the spiritual side, check out Sense of Soul podcast. You can hear my whole story there. And then, if you're interested in connecting with me, you just go to my website. That's myrony.com, and then
Right.
there's a section for my Myrony mentoring, and you just set up a time and we have a conversation.
Exactly. And I always do that, because I feel like when somebody is trying to connect, or somebody trying to find, maybe they are looking for some sort of work, some sort of help, I prefer to put my speaker's detail in my description, and that's what I'm going to do as well for your, that's Myrony mentorship and your podcast, so people can get inspiration and then hear your story, your journey, and maybe looking for mentorship. Moving ahead, Alysha, you shared about how you came up with those all idea about that's Myrony, your mentorship program and all. And it seems wonderful, even though we know at the starting was maybe uh, getting understanding those conscious effort, creating this in effort to understand those intuition, those signals, repeated signals. And as I earlier also told, that we all get experience all these kind of things, but we keep avoiding. And when we are talking about all these things, we are talking to create our higher conscious level, or our spiritual level, to create with understanding with us, within us, and with ourselves. Do you find about these kind of other therapies? We heard a lot of meditation, yoga, and many other people talk a lot. Do you find these other kind of therapies or any kind of possibilities are also helpful for people if they would like to follow or do?
Oh, absolutely. So I forgot to give the information for my shout out to my friend Deanne Riendeau. So she does the Akashic Records, and it's rosehope.ca. She's up in Canada, and she's able to do these sessions virtually. And so what's interesting about the Akashic is that it's talking about past lives, but it's really connecting on a deeper soul level. Past life regression therapy is incredible for people who want to have this understanding. But what I've discovered is that even when you gain the awareness of where maybe these issues in your in where what's happening currently in your life, they can kind of just go away. You don't really need to worry about them. But I think meditation is wonderful. But if meditation isn't working for you, there's so many other ways. I mean, if I will admit I'm not a big meditator. I also I do additional energy work and things like that. But meditation, because I'm not a visual person, like when people do guided meditations, I just don't see it. So, there's so many different ways, whatever works for you. That's the biggest thing. What works for you? If it's not working for you, well, maybe that's not necessarily, doesn't mean it won't work for you in the future. But what I learned for myself was that through looking at all these different ways, doing, finding this spiritual research myself, finding all these different ways of looking at things, that's what really helped me. So what I do with my clients is that what took me 15 years, I can do in a matter of a month or two. And I just take them on a nice little, straight path. And just to give a little message about one of these messages that I give is that in addition to this experience that I had, this spiritual experience, I somehow met this person who ended up channeling the most beautiful messages. And these messages, for some reason, I'm the one that knows what to do with them. So I'm giving guidance. There's 21 pages of these messages, and I'm giving guidance when I'm in these sessions of which message to share. So I do want to share one. It was first channeled on August 20th, 2016. Again, go to Sense of Soul. You'll hear the whole story. But it was one foot leads straight, the other is misguided. Both are necessary and will always be present. Make sure to follow the straight foot because it's the fastest path to your destiny. I think we can take that so many ways, but I truly believe that if we stay with our heart and our soul, and we start really, really, really trusting what our intuition is telling us, that is our straight foot, and that is going to lead where we want to be in life.
Yeah, and when we are talking about it, as a woman, you experience a lot of as a my irony, a lot of good or bad, we whatever we can define it. But as as a female, but you come out more strongly. You come out your more or your own real conscious and higher conscious level of version of yourself. Many women they feel, and but what one advice as a woman would you like to give to them? Is it courage? Is it something more than that, or is it what exactly it takes from where you feel no, I don't belong to this world, to come up more stronger and serving even more passionately to others? How
Well,
one
I
can
think
develop as a woman?
yeah, well, as a woman, I mean, women we're generally more compassionate than men in the first place. And actually why that is the case is men just they're afraid. They're afraid to show that side to them. And so it's really special when you find those guys that are, willing to be vulnerable, but that's that whole coin of love and fear and everything in between. And so as women, if we can start looking at everyone in this world as children and, looking at it from this grade level of like, and it's not a place of judgment. It's just where people are in their awareness. If people are angry and, doing violent things and, they're basically a little kid. They don't understand where it is. So if we as women can come together and look from a place of compassion versus a place of judgment on literally everything, on when we see someone who's being, I mean, let's just, I don't want to, get into anything, but like religion, so many people are like, this is the only way of being, this is the only way of believing, like again, being brought up Catholic, I or even on the Christian side, why anybody would want to believe with just a heaven and a hell, and that's it. I'm like, why? Why would a a loving God want to do that? Eternal damnation and one chance around. To me, that doesn't make any sense. How could we have those connections to people? How could we even evolve if we were only given one sense or one chance in this as a soul in the physical? And so, maybe if we start embracing so much more, but that is also coming from this place of compassion. And and then I encourage people who are of other beliefs. It's like, well, maybe there's a side, on the Christian side, because if you look at who Jesus represented, it was just love and compassion despite everything that happened. So if we can just come from that place, I think as women, we would truly make such a massive shift to humanity, because how many women are out there? There's a lot of us. And if we can really truly come from that place of compassion and literally just looking at everybody as children, some, yay, some are actually, they're in college, they're doctorate, they're still your children. You can be however old, your child is your child. If we can start looking as humanity as our children and looking from that place of compassion, I think that would be the biggest message I could give to women out there.
And when we are talking about the message for women, how you find a platform or talk show such kind like Women Dialogue is important.
Yes, it's so important. I absolutely love what you're doing. I love the fact that you somehow found me on LinkedIn. I reached out. I got to have this incredible conversation with you. I cannot wait to have you on That's My Rennie and hear your, here, because you said you got a fun spiritual side. I was like, woo, yay, we're going to, dive in deep there. And then it's about how we can keep connecting people. And, I encourage everybody, please use the hashtag That's My Rennie. I also have the word Myronistic instead of synchronistic. And isn't that Myronic? So it's like, please, if you like the word, start sharing it. I don't know about you, but I'm very tired of selfies. I'm tired of people doing silly dances that do absolutely nothing for this world. But what if we can really start connecting on this much deeper level? I think we really can make that shift. And with women dialogues, you're absolutely making that shift. So thank you so much for this opportunity to to share my story in a completely different part of the world. I mean, that's so exciting.
Thank you, Alysha, for sharing your, faith, your honest opinion, as well as the love for Women Dialogue. I really appreciate it. And same time, thanks a lot for your time, your knowledge, and for your wisdom to share with our audience, along with your, as we say, that's my Rini, your podcast and your mentorship. I'm looking forward to connect with you, and definitely to our all audience and listeners who are watching and listening us. As we were talking about Alysha, she runs her podcast. I'm going to put her details in the description as well. You are here to connect, grow, and develop. And we are here to support you in this journey. And that's the reason I'm saying the description are available about the Alysha and her work. If you're finding something, we were talking about my irony or my irony, or maybe some kind of mentorship, look forward towards Alysha, connect with her. And with this same note, see you next time with one more speaker to get inspired, to motivate, as always I do. Till then, take care. See you.